everyone, welcome back to TV Guys, the show where the only thing we can teach you is how to mispronounce Angela Kinsey's name. I'm Matt.
I'm Brian, and you actually mispronounced the word mispronounce as well.
Did I? Look,
you said mispronounce.
Doing this podcast thing is really hard. I've been talking for like 35 years, and I'm just now starting to get the hang of it. So that joke is, if you listen to, by the way, one of my favorite, like, I know we shouldn't have our favorites because our podcast episodes are like our kids. It's like you love them all equally. But
we don't.
We don't. Well, that's what you say in public, and then in private, you're like, I don't really care for Job. But I really enjoyed our dinner party episode because I felt like we brought some really good information, and we also really had fun about one of our favorite episodes of TV. So if you haven't listened to the Office dinner party episode that we did, go back and listen to it. Even if you're like not an Office fan, be like, all right, I'm going to watch that episode of The Office, and I'm going to listen to Matt and Brian's commentary on that episode, and we'll see if that's enough for me. We're giving you an hour and a half worth of work.
Yeah.
But that episode aired, and then we had someone who responded like, you guys both pronounced Angela's last name incorrectly. And so I think I said it wrong, and then you even corrected me incorrectly as well.
Yeah.
So
mine was closer than yours.
I mean, sure, but it's still wrong.
I know, but I still need people to know that I was less wrong.
So instead of like saying your name is Brian Jonas, I would be like, oh, his name's Brian Jonas. Like, I'm still pretty wrong.
It's less wrong.
Is it? All right, whatever. But hey, we love hearing feedback from you guys. Maybe more positive feedback in the future. Like, I'm so proud of that episode, and then someone's like, "Oh yeah, you did this wrong." I'm like, well,
negative feedback is more fun. Like, think about in any job, you talk more about the bad stuff than the good stuff. Generally,
true. Like,
they make better stories.
You have people come out like, oh, I just love what you do. And like, that's great. Wonderful. But it's like, how often do you repeat that? It's like, oh, I had someone come up and they told me that they love my show. I'm like, well, then you're just full of yourself. So
actually, I did get a text within the last month saying someone really liked our show. Actually, it's the wife of the guy who commented us the mistakes.
Look at that.
Yeah.
So there we go. That couple, they gather around the fire and they just turn on our podcast and they listen together and they cuddle and just sing songs when it's done. I don't know what the scenarios I've concocted in my head.
I'm just letting you go.
See, I was expecting you to cut me off, and so I just kept going and making it dumber, and I'm like, why am I still saying words?
Why would I cut you off?
That's true. That is a very fair point. Well, today it is September, guys. We made it. We're in fall. And so
for you listening, it's probably October because we're way ahead on recording.
No, it'll be September for them. It may be mid-September, but it'll be September. In fact, you might actually be listening to this episode while I'm in Florida at Disney World. So be like, hey, Matt, hope you're enjoying your vacation. And I'll be like, thank you, person. I am. Because I'm sure it'll be great. But what comes with September? The thing that kids all hate, going back to school. So in commemoration, this is our going back to school episode. And we're like, we need to talk about teachers, but we've talked about teachers before. So Brian, you and we came up with this idea where we wanted to get 5 TV characters and have them teach us different life skills and then pit that team against the other one to see who would become the more... Oh my gosh, I just burped right in the middle of a sentence as I'm saying that. Who would become the better, well-rounded individual? All right? So if you're like, hey, I went to school and they never taught me this stuff, then these are the things, that's kind of where I went. Where it's like stuff that I probably should have learned in school and I didn't. Brian, what was your method that you did for picking?
Well, for one thing, I didn't choose anyone who is an actual teacher, just to kind of make it a little more challenging.
Same.
So, yeah, there's no, Feeney, there's no Mr. Belding, none of that. And then I kind of went the opposite way. I know, Matt, you went with a skill first and figured which TV character could teach me. I kind of started going through lists of shows and trying to think of who is someone who's an expert at something and what could they teach me.
Yep. So like to start off, here's my first one that I went with is I was thinking, what's one thing that I really would like a really good grasp on that all adults should have a great grasp on, and that's finances. And finances are really hit or miss based on public school education of what you're going to learn. So I'm like, what would be a character that I really want to teach me finances? And yes, I could have gone with a Richard Gilmore from Gilmore Girls, or even a Donald Trump from Celebrity Apprentice. But they are the type that they are in money. They've been in money for a long time, and they might not be able to teach you how to make money. They would just teach you how to live a rich lifestyle if they're teaching you anything. So I went with a guy that is super smart about money, but is always has a metaphorical gun pointed at his head, and that's Marty Byrde from the Ozarks, or from Ozark.
Is that Jason Bateman?
That's Jason Bateman's character. Now, if
I've never seen the show, but I'll also let you talk.
It's very suspenseful, and it's if you like watching shows where characters just constantly make the worst decisions possible for their emotional and physical well-being, then this is the show for you. So Marty Byrde, he like this happens in the first episode, so I'm not going to give too much away for those who haven't seen it, is that it comes out that he has been helping like money launder with his business for a drug cartel. And so that they've had this connection with a high ranking member of this drug cartel. And he comes up and he's like, I think that you guys have been stealing money from me. And so Marty Byrde is able to spin it and be like, no, here's the deal. I know a great way to embezzle even more money than what you've been giving us to embezzle. And it's to do this cash-rich area full of tourists in the Ozarks, and we go down there, and it's going to be so much easier for us. I can embezzle 3 times, 4 times amount what I'm doing for you per month, etc. And so he gives him the shot, and the series is about them like outwitting like FBI, outwitting the cartel, outwitting different a lot of different problematic people in his life. And so, like I said, he's got this gun pointed at him by multiple different people all throughout the show, but yet he still comes out on top. And so this guy knows books well enough. He knows finances well enough that he could teach you a lot of that stuff. Sure, morals you don't want to learn from this guy. He's very unscrupulous, for sure. But it's like, if you are able to work that hard and to create money opportunities like that, I want to see a bit of what you're doing and not get into the same lifestyle, but like to know how to use my money better and to balance, etc. So,
exactly. You can learn a lot of principles about that.
Yeah.
And you're so right about public education. I learned way more about finances after graduating than I ever did in high school.
Yeah, same here. It's like you kind of have to do it a little bit, but I can't remember much of what I learned from. I think I failed in 4th grade. We had a unit about writing checks, and I threw away my checkbook in the middle of it and never turned it in because I'm like, I'm so lost and I'm so off balance on this. And I got an F on it, of course, because...
Well, now it's like I've never actually balanced the physical checkbook. I mean, I do my banking online like I think most people do now.
Yeah, exactly.
Except I live in a duplex, and the guy who lives below me, we share internet. He pays me half for the internet bill, and he doesn't like any kind of electronic stuff. So instead of Venmo, which would be way easier, we have a little dresser in the garage, and he leaves cash in there. And it almost feels like a drug drop whenever I go to pick up my internet money.
Oh, I can't remember what. Oh, you go to Del Taco, and you've got a bag of money there waiting for you. No, it's really funny though that I say that story about failing my checking unit in 4th grade because as an adult I worked at a bank for a while, and even there was one year where the job that I did, part of it was helping people who still relied on balancing their checkbooks. They'd come in with checkbooks and have me help them balance it, and I'm like, you're picking the wrong guy. I failed this when I was a kid.
All right, so I went with just trying to figure out which one to go with in general. How about just general survival skills? You're just out in the wild, whether it's like camping or just daily. Who can teach you just random stuff? There's a lot of people who could.
I've got that same skill on mine, so let's see if we match up.
Very, very well could. I went with Saeed Jarrah from Lost.
Nice. That is a great pick.
Yeah, because you watch Lost, especially the earlier seasons, and he's basically just like MacGyver for the island. It comes to like, I'm going to take everyone's broken electronics and I'm going to try to make a radio like, a professor from the Gilligan's Island, but ripped. And then even, all right, I'm going to cut open a bullet and use the bullet hole to gash this wound while we're chasing a baby across the island. Like, so many people on that show would be dead if it weren't for Saeed.
Yeah. I think that's a great pick. You're absolutely right. Like, he is so resourceful, and like he gets this nice like superhero status where he's like the human lie detector, but then he also does have these survival skills that come in really handy. But it's amazing the amount of survival skills that plane crash had between him and Locke.
Oh yeah,
even just those two, like you guys are set.
Exactly,
no problem.
But even like that episode in season 3 where they go to Mikhail's place and he's pretending to be Dharma Initiative.
Yep.
The way he figures out that he's not alone is that he saw the stirrups on the horse outside and saw that it was set for someone shorter than him. He noticed all of that in like a second.
Man,
I definitely would have not noticed that, and I probably would have been killed by the eye patch man in that scene.
See, your pick might be a little better than mine because especially you've got that added element of like safety in terms of his military training. Yeah. My pick, like, because I was floating with this too. I decided, I'm like, I definitely want to have a survival. And there's someone who came to mind first. But then I was like, is this the best pick? And I bounced with some other ones. I'm like, you could maybe throw Klaus in from the Series of Unfortunate Events because he's so well read. So he would know exactly like the right things to do. You could put in like someone from Parks and Rec that like studies this really well, that they're in the Parks Department. But I'm like, now there's no one that really... like Nick Offerman, or I keep saying his actor names, Ron Swanson, or even Nick Offerman's character from Last of Us. Like, there's a lot of really good picks, but I'm like, I got to go with a real life person, Bear Grylls. That I've seen a number of his shows. I didn't watch them religiously, but I've seen enough to be like, this guy knows what he's talking about, and there's a lot of, and he knows like survival stuff for a lot of different regions too. He'll be put in an icy climate. He'll be put in a tropical jungle. He'll be put in a desert scenario, and he knows what to do and how to survive in any of those positions. And also he knows way more about wildlife too than any one person should. But like he is great in that regards. I'm like, I think that's who I'd want leading me, but I do really like the Saeed pick.
Yeah. He's the first one that came to mind. I'm like, I'm not even going to start to think of other people.
Yeah, I might have picked him if I thought of him, but it's good. Look at me conceding, gentlemanly.
All right. So next, I'm going to cheat because my next is actually going to be a duo of teachers who would both teach together and also probably get into a fight and compete with each other, which would probably just leave me eating good food because I'm thinking, who could teach me how to cook?
I know, and they're from the same show.
Actually, no, they're not. They're from two different shows, technically 2 different decades because one is set in the past. How about a duel of Monica from Friends and Beverly Goldberg from the Goldbergs? They would both insist on being the number one.
Yep.
And they both are shown to be phenomenal cooks. I mean, and so I would love to just sit there and look. I mean, obviously I wouldn't ever get up to their level, but I would learn how to cook some stuff and I would just walk away 15 pounds heavier with an amazing meal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Beverly, what's nice about the duo there that you have is that you have high end with Monica, but then you have like the affordable with Beverly and like the lots of butter and lots of fat and all that sort of stuff. Like that sort of home cooked meal that like a Beverly Goldberg or Marie Barone making.
Oh yeah, I could have thrown Marie in there too, but I'll stick with Monica and Beverly. Yeah.
And that's where like Marie wouldn't work on this because she doesn't want to teach it. She doesn't want to give that away. She wants to be that. And I think you'd have that same issue maybe with Beverly, even though she wouldn't view you as a competition for her kids. But there's a little bit of that pride that's like, no, this is my thing. I can't give that away. Monica might teach you, but I don't think Beverly would want to teach.
But I think Beverly, you guys got to play the angle of like, you just pretend. I mean, obviously it's not the case for me because obviously I do have a mom in my life. If you play like, well, I never had a mom in my life and you're such a motherly figure and can you fill that role? And she'd be like, yes, come in, do that. Because she did that on the show with. I'm watching through the Goldbergs right now. You'll notice that when I'm watching through a show, I'll end up mentioning it on the podcast more often. With Lainey, she did that with her daughter's friend who doesn't have a mom, and she's taken her in a number of times.
That's fair. I definitely also had this, like, this is another area you want to have a really good base for, is cooking.
Yeah.
Especially, if you're going to have any amount of time where you're a bachelor or bachelorette and you can't rely on someone else routinely making this food for you. But I went a different route too, because like I thought of Monica, or I thought of like a Gordon Ramsay, and I'm like, no, I don't want like that high quality stuff, because I want something affordable. That needs to also be factored into this. And so like that took out Sookie from Golden Girls, but then I thought about Luke from Gilmore Girls. Very different shows. Yeah. And I thought about Luke, and I'm like, ooh, Luke would work, but would he be able to teach well? And I eventually arrived at the best of both worlds, because you would have someone who can make like that Michelin star level stuff, but who also makes very down-to-earth, practical, cheap things as well. And that's Carmi Brizzato from The Bear. And so like, you can look at him as a teacher, and you see, if you've watched The Bear, you've seen times where he's melted down. He's not a perfect person. He's had issues, and he would be difficult to work with. But when he's teaching, that's not where he has the stress. His stress comes from managing the restaurant and the business side of it, and not going under, and all of these decisions. His stress doesn't come from the actual joy of cooking. So like, you see some scenes where he's helping out into the kitchen and teaching people stuff, and he is enjoying like teaching them and helping them get better and seeing the quality in them. So I think that he could be a good teacher if he viewed that as valuable. And then he would also be able to give you like really good high quality tips, while also giving you some stuff that could be just like Chicago beef style stuff. Like, that's not elaborate high end quality things, but it's really good. And he made it really well. And everyone's like, they'd try it and be like, oh my gosh. Like people who would be so mad at him and don't want him to be right, they'd try his food and be like, dang it, this guy knows what he's doing. So
yeah, that's good, and that's perfect. You do want that mixture, that the high end with the low end, not the low end, but the more affordable.
Yes.
So Matt, have you ever been in the situation where someone says that your cooking is like the better cooking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, and it was just something as simple as just.
Were you expecting it? You act like you were expecting a no. Yeah, I've been in that situation. Oh.
No, I wasn't sure. But for me, it was just tacos, just regular. Get a packet from the store and put meat on, and like, yeah, Brian's tacos are really good. And like, I make the same stuff. They're like, yeah, but Brian's is better.
I make great soups. That I really care about my soups when I make them, and I put a lot of work, and like, it cost me like $20 to $30 to make a batch of soup, and I don't know. Like, for anyone else out there who does soups, I'm like, I don't know if that's good. It feels like it's a lot, but I care about my soup, and so I make good soup.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, so I did mine, so then we're back to you.
Yeah, the last two you've been piggybacking on me because you've had the same skill.
Yeah, it's like if we have the same skill, let's just go for it at the same time.
All right, this one might be a bit of a stretch, but I was looking for another one. So actually, in 3 days from recording this, I'm going to be getting a new puppy. Okay. And so thought, who would be really good at dog training? And I went with Captain Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, because, I mean, Cheddar is a very well-behaved dog.
Yep.
And just, I wouldn't want to go as far. I take some principles. I wouldn't want to, it seems like he's going so far as like Cheddar doesn't get to just be fun and be a dog. It's like he's on a job all the time.
Yeah.
But I love the ability to just have that control, that respect with the dog. Like we're going to try to teach him to ring a bell whenever he wants to go outside. And we're going to see how that works.
Yeah, we're trying that with our puppy. We just got a new puppy about a month.
You got a puppy as well.
Ago. And she's much better about being housebroken. She does communicate like with us, like that she has to go outside, but the kids don't pick up on that. It's very subtle, and it's like, it would be nice. We have a thing of bells hanging from the door. It's like, if she can learn to hit that, that's a great signal for anyone. Whereas we just kind of have to like be paying attention to her, like, oh, okay, I can read the signs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd want a Captain Holt. I mean, there's also like professional dog trainers in actual shows that we see. I'm trying to think of who would be a good dog trainer. I mean, Shaggy, he trained both Scooby and Scrappy to be able to talk and solve mysteries. So I mean,
but was that training from Shaggy, or was that just what Scooby Doo did?
Oh no, it's training, 100%.
Or
look at Shaggy. He's a very responsible, upstanding citizen.
Or is it that they're always smoking so much that everyone's hallucinating that he can talk?
Oh my gosh, new headcanon right there. There you go, guys. That one was for free.
Because even though Fred, Daphne, and Velma don't seem like they partake, but I'm guessing there could be a residual smoke that gets to them enough.
Was there ever a Dr. Dolittle show? I don't know if there was ever a show, because if there was, like, he would be able to help you train in a way that no one else can. Because it's almost like what women want, whereas like you can, Mel Gibson be able to read women's minds and be able to relate with them on a level that a lot of other men can't. It's like you can actually hear from these animals what works for them and what doesn't work.
That would have been helpful last night. So for our listeners, I told Matt this. Actually, I lived in an office episode. There was a bat in my house last night. My neighbor and I were able to get him out. But that would have been helpful. I could just be like, hey, bat, I'm opening the window. Can you please fly out?
Dr. Dolittle, can you relay that message? I'm not a translator. Well, then what good are you?
Yeah. So, Matt, did you have dog training on yours or no?
I didn't, but I was about to say, speaking of translator, so here's something I thought of. This was one that, like, there's a few of these. I was like, let me think of the skill before the person. This was the one I thought of the person. I'm like, no, this would be a good skill to have. And that would be about language skills.
Okay.
Now, if you want someone to teach you like a language, sure, there's plenty of people out there. You could pick Dora the Explorer if you want to learn Spanish. You can pick Phoebe Buffet if you want to learn French, even though the time she tried to teach someone French, it didn't go over well. But maybe that's more on Joey just being a moron. But here's who I thought of. Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek. She knows hundreds of languages, even as a rookie, as an ensign, like at mid-20 to young 20s. And so you might be like, well, okay, she knows, that's her. She just knows hundreds of languages. But it's like, do you not think that there are language tools that can help her be able to learn languages better, that exist for so many different languages? You'll find that people who are linguists know those rules really well so that they can begin to apply them to all of these different languages to learn how those languages fit in with those rules. And so I think that, yeah, she could teach me I want to learn Spanish, or I want to learn French, or whatever. I even just want to learn one language. You also learn the tools for learning that language, and I think she could teach you that really well. She's a very smart person. You see that in just kind of how she gets out of situations too throughout the different Star Trek series that she has a big role in. And so she definitely has the capability to teach, and that's really how Starfleet is set up, as teach the people below you, and a really good hierarchy of that overall. And so I think she would have all the tools that you'd want for both a teacher and for a linguist to help you develop and be able to learn new languages.
Again, I've never seen Star Trek, but from everything I've heard, I think that's a good pick. And especially I think just people in Star Trek in general, it seems like they are all very well equipped to teach whatever their thing is.
Yeah. And you probably have seen the Chris Pine Star Treks, at least.
Nope.
You haven't?
I've not seen a single episode or movie of any Star Trek.
Gosh. The Chris Pine ones are very accessible for people, and that that was where Star Trek movies turned a little bit more. Gosh, dang it. I'm so sorry about my That's where the Star Trek movies turned a little bit more Star Wars-y, because Star Trek had been for a long time about political commentary and utopia and metaphors, where Star Wars was like space opera. And so the Star Trek movies that are set in that timeline are a little bit more Star Wars-y. And
there's so many Star Trek references and stuff in pop culture that I've picked up a very baseline knowledge just without even watching them. Mm-hmm. So I know some things, like I know Spock, I know Kirk and Picard, and like Sulu. I know some of these names, and I know the actors, but I just don't know them all beyond that.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I suggest that's a good launching point, in my opinion, for Star Trek. And then I think if you want like classic Star Trek feel, then the next step would be the new Paramount series Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That does a really good job of bridging that old Star Trek feel into a more modern setting.
Okay. So, again, this is another one where it's not necessarily a skill that I need to have, but if anyone were to teach it, it would be this guy, even though you basically just have to never question him and and just shut up and realize that you're going to be called an idiot. And that would be if you wanted to learn ranching from Bo Bennett, who is Sam Elliott's character on The Ranch on Netflix. Matt, I don't think you've watched the show, have you?
I haven't. Nope.
But I mean, you can it's Sam Elliott being Sam Elliott, and it's, you know, this stubborn old man who's basically only lived his life doing ranching. A little bit of Ron Swanson, but even more stubborn, if you can believe that.
Yes, I can. I watched Taylor Sheridan shows like Yellowstone, 1923 and 1883. Those guys are stubborn ranch hands. Any of those could also probably fit in this category of people to teach you.
Yeah. Well, for instance, there's an episode early on. There's an episode. You know, one of his sons is played by Ashton Kutcher, and Ashton Kutcher is in his bedroom about to have sex with a girl, and then the dad just bursts in and says, like, he knows what's going on. He doesn't care. Get out here. We got to do some ranching, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, Heather, say hi to your mom for me. It's like, he does not care.
Like Biff, say hi to your mom for me.
Except in this case, he literally just meant say hi to your mom. But yeah.
He wasn't like, hey, I want to get with your mom.
No, not in this case.
Not
but
in that case.
No. But he does have his own love story and weird life, but that's a whole other part of it. But yeah, like his little quotes like,
Don't we all?
I'm just off the top of my head. He says, like, yo, one of the guys, he says, early is on time is late.
Yeah.
And there's like, what do you use for seasonings when you're cooking? I use salt.
Now that's a Ron Swanson line there for sure. Dar. That's a Ron Swanson line there. Mm-hmm. Guys, I swear I know how to talk. I promise.
You're like Jerry on Parks and Rec, where as soon as anyone's looking at you or you're being recorded, then like you freeze up.
What? Well, like maybe right now in that one instance, but don't like blanket compare me to Jerry. You're just like him, just so you know. Yeah, let me go.
Yeah, why would you ever want to be Jerry, who is happy with his beautiful wife and gets to live 100 years old and doesn't bothered by anything? Why would you want to be that?
For a lot of reasons. Like, good on them that they gave Jerry those qualities because, like, that's great. Here's how I do want to be like Jerry. I love his optimism. I love characters that are optimistic. I tend to be optimistic in life. And even then I'm like, I should be more optimistic because there's so much hope in the world and there's so much possibility for good. And if you're focused on the negative, you're going to create the negative. If you're focused on the positive, more often than not, positivity will win out.
Which is why it's much less depressing to make fun of Jerry than to make fun of Toby on The Office.
Yeah, that's true. Toby will be like, you're right. I'm like, no, I'm not right. I'm just giving you a hard time. No, you're right. All right. I'm sorry, Toby. Yeah. All right. No, you just did that.
Yeah.
All right. Last pick, and then we'll compare our teams together. So for me, this was the one that I really was like, I need this skill. And I really then like went from the skill and tried to find out who would fit that skill. This is the one I did that the most with. And so I was like, I don't know nearly as much about cars or mechanical issues or engineering, that sort of thing, that I really want to. Like, engineering is a big term, but it's really like being able to even just change your own oil or like knowing when your car needs to be and like the stuff that you can do with it. So I'm like, who could teach me about cars and maintenance? And it's so hard. I almost had like a tie here because like I came up with someone, then Angie's like, well, what about Jay Leno? I'm like, ooh, Jay Leno's a great pick because he's really smart and he's really into his car. Like he has really good car smartness. I guess he's pretty smart too. He's got a good wit. But my pick that I like is Tim Taylor. Now, you might be like, okay, this guy hurts himself all the time. And you're right, 100%. But if you ignore that when he says something like, well, this is the way you should do it, but I like to, like, no, we're not going to do it the way you like to do it. Let's do the way that we should do it, because the way you like to do it is going to get someone killed. So if you, like, know going into it, like, don't buy into it as like, oh, but we want an extra 50 horsepower on this. Like, no, the horsepower it had was fine. We're good.
Yeah.
But people have to...
You probably don't, yeah.
But people forget that he did restore a hot rod by himself completely from the ground up. And it worked, and it looked great, and that was like a major through line. It wasn't like it was like this overall arcing theme, but it was always the thing that he was doing. Like, weekends he would just go and restore the hot rod, or like his kids would get involved and stuff like that. And so, like,
it's like the home improvement equivalent of filling in lot 48 on Parks and Rec.
Yeah. So, like, he did it. He did great.
Yeah.
And, like, it worked when he stuck within the parameters. And like, he also is a fun guy and a nice enough guy that's like, he tried to teach his kids, and his kids just didn't have anything to do with him. So if I'm like, I want to learn this, then he would be good. His TV show is teaching people. That's what the show is. So he has the teaching ability. He has the know-how. I want to learn from him.
And wasn't it when he finally finished the hot rod, that's when they made the Grease Lightning video?
Yes. Yep.
That was a good episode and a really good homage to Grease.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, Matt, this is great that that's your last pick, because my last pick is Al Borland.
And Al, you're great, because Al is a great second pick. Like, anything that Tim knows, Al knows actually how to do it.
Exactly. For any kind of like home improvement, I mean, you can probably also get some. I mean, they don't focus on it. I'm sure Al knows some stuff about cars too.
Yeah.
But just like you said, Al knows how to do things, and Tim is like downplays Al's helpfulness, but Al doesn't have the ego of like, I'm going to make everything 10 times more powerful. Like, you know, Al will fix something and not have to fix something, blow it up, refix it.
Yes.
And even in the beginning, they show a flashback, I think, to when, because there was a flashback, because it was like when Tool Time first started, where Tim had a beard and Al didn't. You remember that?
I do. Yep.
Yeah. And they say like he's licensed contractor, this, a master plumber. Like, he has the qualifications to be on that show. He has the qualifications to run the show. I don't think he has the charisma and showmanship that Tim does.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's why the dynamic works on the show for the show and the show within a show. Like, it works well for Tool Time. It works well for Home Improvement. And he's a great character. I think I don't have any problem with that pick, but I don't know if like I don't know if cars is going to be his forte. He seems like more like a woodworking carpenter type. Yeah. Like that's more his forte than the other.
Exactly. Now, it's not part of my pick, but I did have an honorable mention.
Okay.
I'd like to go. My honorable mention would be in the skill of holding a grudge by the means of slowly and meticulously over the course of 20 to 30 years, building an international drug empire just to crush your enemy and eventually get blown up by him. And that would be Gus Fring.
So there's a lot of great things we could learn from Gus. I don't think that should be what we focus on. I mean, like, honestly, if you want to talk about finances, I'm sure Gus had a finance guy, but he had to be super involved in it to know different. Like, Gus probably could be another great example of the finances side of this, or even just the businessman side, because that's really what he is. He is an upscale businessman for a decrepit a degenerate type of business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had a legitimate side. Like, I'm sure that Los Pollos Hermanos was all done legally to hide all the money.
Yeah. And like, we saw too, like, how much of his employees respect him too, because he just had such a high quality, but he also had this kindness about him too. I mean, we know the kindness wasn't real, but the perceived kindness that they wanted to, like, his assistant manager, like, having to clean out the fryer like 3 different times. And it's like, I'm really sorry that I couldn't do it right. And Gus, like, I'll just do it myself, sort of thing.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I don't think that Gus actively hates everybody, especially his chicken people. That sounds bad. chicken restaurant employees.
Yeah.
I think he's just in the mindset of his bottom line, and like if someone gets in the way and becomes a nuisance, then he will do what he has to do. But he's not looking like, hey, I'm gonna eventually kill all these people.
Yeah, he's not a murderer for the sake of murder. And I think he has a similar moral code as Mike does of the, if they're in the game, they're in the game and they know the risks. If they're not in the game, like, cause like he doesn't, we haven't seen him go outside of the game and kill people. That he did threaten Walt's family.
I would say he did threaten a baby.
Like, yeah, he threatened, but like, would he have followed through on it? I don't know. Like, you can maybe make the argument that he wouldn't have and knew that the threat would follow through. I don't know, but
I don't know. It's true. I get what you're saying, but I don't think that Mike would have ever threatened a baby. I mean, yeah, he threatened, Walt Jr. and Skylar as well. But you're really going for like the worst. The worst is threatening. He even said, "I will kill your infant daughter." That's.
Yeah, I know. Like we're not here. This is a TV character, everyone. We're not here being like, let's justify how this murderer was maybe misunderstood. No, like he's a TV character. We can do this. If this is a real person, we're like, yeah, you're absolutely needing to go to jail. You're a terrible guy.
Yeah.
But this is a fun. Is it a fun thought exercise? It may be.
Also, think about, like, as I was saying, you mentioned Trump earlier. Because of Trump, technically, the average U.S. president has like 1.2 felonies.
There you go.
Like how, if Bill Gates walks into a bar, the average person in that bar makes millions of dollars.
True.
Yeah.
Well, there's this one like comic that I saw of like where it's like the average human being eats like 1.5 spiders a year or whatever, and someone's like, actually the average usually eats 0, but there's this one guy who keeps throwing the average off, and it's just this guy like a bowl of spiders and he's just eating.
I don't even like to think about that.
So there you go. All right. Well,
so Matt, why don't you run through your team again?
Oh yeah. Thank you. That's what I thought we should do. So my team is, for finances, we have Marty Bird from Ozark. For cook, we've got Carmi Berzado from The Bear. For mechanic, we have Tim Taylor from Home Improvement. For survival, we have Bear Grylls from all the Bear Grylls shows. And for language, we have Uhura from Star Trek.
And for me, for general handiness, we got Al Borland from Home Improvement. For survival, we got Saeed Jarrah from Lost. For dog training, we got Captain Raymond Holt from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. For ranching, we have Bo Bennett from The Ranch. And for cooking, we have a duo of Monica Geller and Beverly Goldberg from Friends and The Goldbergs, respectively.
So let us know which team you think wins. Who do you think has better life skills after that? I gotta say, I think ranching is the one that's a little too descriptive. Like, that's too niche for like it's just the general thing. I know how to ranch. Great. Well, you're in a city.
I do say I would have to give your team the edge because I think we have some of the same ones, but I think that finances and
language.
Finances and language are probably more universally than dog training and ranching. But that goes along with you figuring out the skills first. Whereas I'm just going through who's an expert in something as I go through shows.
I'm competitive. What can I say? I go about it in my own strategic way.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of going about it in your own strategic way, I've been watching through Survivor, and I just got to in the first season. I just got to the merge. So look at that. Nice. That's where I'm at. I forgot that like everyone. Like how bad they were at voting in the first season.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm just going to do what I want. And there's like the 4 alliance, like we're going to vote together. And it's like that first merger, there was 5 different people who had votes or something like that.
Yeah. Well, because you're past the first merge vote, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing is like, and I mean, who wins the first season, right? Without finish.
Yeah.
So it's like you watching that season is like, not that Richard Hatch is necessarily a master manipulator, but at that point in the game, he was one of the only people who actually knew the basics of we need to get a majority and vote them out. Like he was like the only one playing the game at that point in Survivor.
Greg at least had a general idea of the game, but wasn't like as organized or like or realizing how dire it was to get his ducks in a row. And I think, if I recall correctly, he starts to, but it's like too late by the point he does.
I think Richard Hatch's most brilliant move, and I know we've talked about it, but I won't bring it up just so in case you forget, is when you get to the final 3 challenge, where it's Richard and the other 2 final candidates they're the final 3, and it's the challenge to see who's going to be like, because it used to be whoever wins that final 3 challenge would go and vote someone off, basically choosing who they go to the finals with.
Yeah.
And what Rich did in that challenge looks on the end like a stupid move, but ends up being the most brilliant move, and I don't think he would have won if he didn't do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about.
I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a few things I remember. Is like, I know that like Sue makes a decent way. I know that Rudy makes it a decent way. I can't remember who like the final 2 are, but I think it's like Rudy's in the jury and Sue's in the jury, because I remember her speech, but I don't remember who Richard is up against at the end.
Well, I'll leave those to be, obviously I know all these. Yeah. I'll leave that as a spoiler for you. Let me know when you get to the final 3, because it's interesting. For me, I started watching Survivor. We'll stop with Survivor talk in a minute here, but I started watching Survivor in season 2, and even though you're watching through it, especially as an old season, it's not necessarily like the best TV, but I have such a nostalgic like heart for season 2 that I love season 2 of Survivor so much.
Yeah. Yeah, season 2 is really good, especially like just thrown into. Was that the one that they did the first tribe swap, or was that season 3?
Season 3 is the first tribe swap. Season 2 had Colby, which was probably one of the biggest, one of the first after Richard Hatch, and like Sue and Rudy is another one of like the A-list Survivor celebrities of the time.
Yeah, that was a good season. That was the first one I got into. Because like I didn't watch the first season, but I was like, oh, this seemed like an interesting show. Let me watch season 2. And I'm like, this is really great.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that is it for Survivor. And it's also it for our top 5 our teachers. So let's jump into trivia. Last week, we talked about The Chosen. And so if you haven't listened to that episode, listen to that episode. If you haven't watched The Chosen, what are you doing? Go watch The Chosen. It's such a good show. It's for free. You can find it free through like Angel Studios and their app and The Chosen app. Like, they're great in being able to make that happen for you to watch that. Yep. You don't even have to be on streaming services or anything like that. Although The Chosen.
Also, this Jesus guy is a pretty good teacher.
He is. Yeah. He should have been on my list. But we did bring up how in the movie Jesus Revolution earlier this year that Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus, was in that movie. He played Lonnie Frisbee. But one of the disciples the actor who played one of the disciples made a cameo appearance in it. And so we asked, what was that actor or the disciple? And it was the actor who played Matthew. Paris Patel is in Jesus Revolution. So
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, it's a good movie. That's on Netflix, I believe. It's on something streaming that's really common. I think it's Netflix.
Okay, cool.
So, what do you got for trivia this week, Brian?
So what I got is one of my picks was Saeed Jarrah from Lost, who was played by the actor Naveen Andrews. Now, from behind-the-scenes videos and features, you notice that he had long fingernails, the character did. And that was for a specific out-of-show reason that Saeed had long fingernails. So do you know why that is?
For climbing.
Yes.
Just shove the nails into a wall.
So, Matt, do you know this?
I don't.
Okay.
So, there you go. Long fingernails, guys. Why? Why? That's trivia. That's it. Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode. Next week, we are talking about the 80s. We've been doing this series we talked about shows from the 60s, we talked about shows from the 70s. Next week, we're joined by our special guest, Beth, who was with us on the Muppets episode, and we're going to talk about the 80s. So make sure that you're there for that. And everyone loves the 80s. And this time, it won't be about Stranger Things or Cobra Kai. By the way, I almost included Johnny as I was like, hey, you could teach me martial arts. But
I thought him too, but he is technically a teacher, so like he's disqualified by my standards.
He is. Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we didn't do that, so there you go. Anyway, Catch that next week, and until next time, I'm Matt.
I'm Brian.
And we're reminding you to stay tuned and keep watching.